think this is week 6 of our 12th Soil and Nutrition Conference. Our theme still this year is reNaturing ourselves. Very happy to have Maarten. I think it's Maarten Klop. Maarten Klop. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his last name. What is it? How do you say your last name, Maarten?
Maarten Klop.
Klop. On with us today. He's our our young leader from Europe. Doing brilliant work in the process of reNaturing. There's been a lot of talk about the theory of all this, but the actual work of bringing people back to the land, bringing young people, engaging them in work, in action together, all the stuff that Mark was talking about previously, and we've been theorizing about, Maarten's actually doing. I'm not sure how many years ago it was we met. Was it 3 years ago, perhaps?
Yeah, we met 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, and every time I come out here to the Netherlands, I'm in the Netherlands, as is Maarten. We saw each other today for a couple of hours, but we've now gone different directions. So we're in the same country, but not together as we were last week, as I was last week with Charles Dowding. So you've got a presentation to take us away with, and I'm going to let you go with it, and then when you're done, we'll engage the Q&A for those who are, need to be reminded, or doesn't hurt to have a reminder. Please feel free to engage with each other on the chat box and post your questions for Maarten in the Q&A. All right. You good to go? Oops, you're muted.
There we
muted. There we go.
Yeah, they were praising me for being young and tech savvy earlier, but that's not always the case.
You're not that young. You're closer to 30 than you are to 20. So yeah, it's
that's true. There we are.
That's all a continuum. All right, great. I'm gonna turn my camera off and let you take it away, and then we'll pick it back up when you get done.
All right.
All right.
Oh, wait, let me double check. Can you guys see the screen now?
It says Laden. It's black with the word Laden in the middle.
Oh, this is not good. We had figured this out. Do it one more time.
There we go.
Working well?
Yep. We need to. We can see all this, like the slide plus all the ones on the side. You maybe put it into presentation mode.
Let me try, but if I lose you again, then I will have to. Then we have to keep it. I'm afraid.
Not working.
So sorry.
That's all right.
So this does work. Okay. Well, then let me start by just saying that
it's not showing right now. Oh, there we go. Now, okay, I got it now.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right.
So this is always what I say. I'm better with apples than with Apple. But here we are today, and it's an absolute honor to be allowed to speak here. And I followed quite some of the soil nutrient conferences and already learned a lot from it. And before I dive into everything today, I just want to share you guys a little bit about my own story of getting involved with all these topics, because I don't think I'm that unique. And I think many other young people are already embarking on this journey or looking on how to start. Then I want to share a little bit on our experience of really hyperlocal grassroots community organizing. The second part will focus more on how do we collaborate in regional context. And summing up lastly, and I think that is the most fitting words I could find to describe all the work, is our models of developing a learning ecosystem of local action to heal both the earth and the human spirit. And I think you can't do one without the other, and that's something I'd love to talk a bit more about today. So first, just a short introduction. My name is Maarten. I'm 28 years old. I've had a very international upbringing, so I always had the luck of meeting very interesting people and seeing beautiful nature. This then motivated me to 8 years ago start studying here in Utrecht global sustainability science with focus on ecology and hydrology. And to be honest, this was a very unhappy study, studying a lot of bad news. I was studying all these different graphs, and all different scientists were agreeing that largely we're screwed. And I felt that was also really the take-home message of this study, learning a lot about the problems and not yet so much about the solutions. And for me, a key moment was when halfway in my study, I got into contact with local farmers. So I started working on the land, joining the harvest. I set up a project together with the local farmer, looking at organic fruit farming of apples and pears underneath semi-transparent solar panels. And this was very interesting in the content, but also the fact that this farmer just trusted me and said, "Hey, kid, I believe you can do it. Here's a plot of land. Be the project manager. Go for it." This was incredibly empowering. But most importantly, it became for me for the first time so clear that all the things I've been worrying about on a global scale and in my textbooks and in the media, that we can and have to fix that locally. And there where the soil is, where we can store water, where we can create healthy food. And that was a key insight because all of a sudden, all these transition topics, they became tangible and positive. So all of a sudden, we weren't talking about the sustainability transition in a way anymore that was about what you're not allowed to do or what we should do less. It was about actually, what do we want? Do we want more beautiful landscapes, healthier food, more opportunities for people to engage? So the fact that it became tangible and positive was massive. It also showed me, oh, wow, we can really fix many of these things, but we're going to need lots of people to contribute to this. So I've been saying it's going to take people from all walks of life to help make eco-social systems thrive. And that's something I absolutely still stand behind. So ever since that first moment of getting into contact with local farmers and working on the land, it's set me off over the last 7 years to basically work on two main organizations, but one shared mission. And I'll be happy to work the rest of my life on all of this. So really big thanks to William, the farmer, for setting me out on this life's path and all the support that's been granted along the way. So one of the elements, and that's why we were still in our studies, was okay, if it's local action that's needed with lots of diverse people, how are we going to make this fun? And how are we going to include everyone? And that was our first motivation to organize the Grounded Festival, which was in 2019, and which is now 7 years later grown out to be an incredibly diversely skilled community. And we are connected and motivated to celebrate and co-create a regenerative culture. So that is something that we see happening in bigger words, so many people can fill this in with their unique talents in their unique ways. The second is that the topic of food never left me. Food as something that can very positively and very tangibly connect, well, for me personally, my love for people and nature. And I can imagine we're in a room with lots of people and nature lovers. So over these same 7 years, I've continued to work in an organization called AMPT. And Mark Frederiks, my partner at AMPT, he's actually given about a year ago a talk on regional organizing, regional food systems, and interregional collaboration during this conference as well. So maybe for the diehards in the room, you'll see some slides that have gone by about a year ago. And AMP focuses on organizing robust regional and regenerative food systems. We do that very locally on the ground around Amsterdam and Utrecht, but also collaborate and learn with regions all over the world. And very actively myself, I'm busy here on the ground in Utrecht and around Amsterdam, bringing partners together to co-create new regional interventions like community kitchens, food forests, that really contribute to making it a more green, happy, and healthy area. And it's been quite a journey and learned a lot from it. So this is just a picture of some of our volunteers organizing one of the events we've done with Grounded. And in 2019, like I said, we started with very little experience. We had no idea what exactly we had to do. We'd never organized a festival before. We didn't know how to fix all the world's problems. We just wanted to start somewhere. And that is also something I say to all young people that come to our events, that are turning up in lecture rooms, that are showing up to Food Network events, that we truly do have the agency, the autonomy, and the authority to create the world we want to see. And more we're growing the connectivity and the diversity that allow that to happen. And I can completely say this because just by starting, even without knowing all the answers, without asking for permission, you just start, learn by doing, and have fun while you're doing it. And I think that is really a way to keep it up. And what we've noted at Grounded is that The events we organize, they inspire people. So think about a festival. We organize events for International Women's Day or markets, dinners, food truck events. And they're like, hey, this is fun. Can I help? And we say, yes, let's try to activate the people. So we try to make that as low barrier as possible. So you might be on the dance floor one moment and you might be working in the orchard the next day. So people say, can I help? Yes, of course. Every Sunday, you can join us in the garden for working along. Every Thursday, you can join us in the kitchen for cooking along. So it's really easy to contribute, to volunteer. And what we see is that the people that start working with us, they start to take ownership, they stick around, and they start co-creating all new fun ideas together, which inspire others again. So it's inspire, activate, co-create, and wow, it inspires again. And this is a little feedback loop that you'll see coming through a couple times in this presentation. And what's been miraculous is that we've organized ourselves in a really decentralized way. So I always say with inspiration, we reach tens of thousands of people a year physically at our events. Activation, from that, several hundreds of people stick around as active volunteers working along regularly. And then the co-creators, that's about 80 co-creators in our community. They're the ones that initiate new ideas. So they'll raise their hands. They'll be like, can I organize an exposition on women's rights? Well, yes, you can. Can I organize a reading circle about books about soil? Yeah, of course you can. As long as you can argue why it's socially or ecologically relevant, you'll find the space, but also the support to set up your own initiatives at Grounded. And so 80 co-creators, and then we organize ourselves based on a method called holacracy. It's a decentralized organization model, very adaptive, and it's been working really well for us. So it's not that there's no hierarchy, but it sits in different circles. So you have the bigger circle of organization, it's grounded, celebrating and co-creating a regenerative culture is its purpose. And all the sub-circles in that contribute to that purpose, but also have their own purpose. So for example, we have the grounded kitchen, the grounded garden, the grounded workshop, the grounded central bank that takes care of the finances, the grounded legal, and so on. We have about, at the moment, 12 circles, and we adapt this seasonally with the seasonal governance meeting. So that means we have 12 circle leads who take lasting responsibilities. And that's how we've been able to keep this going, self-organizing, self-growing, and allowed me to almost not be needed anymore at the moment. And also has allowed for so many different initiatives to emerge that I could never have predicted, that I could have never organized myself. But I know that I focused on creating the conditions for people to feel empowered and projects to emerge. So in that way, we've created, I guess, a process in which the community can always fulfill in its own needs. One example is that one of the initiatives that emerged is a 1 hour rave. So once a month on a Tuesday from 8 to 9, they organize a 1 hour intensive dancing party. Well, that's not something I could have known that the people here needed, but apparently it's like a workout, stress relief, and about 200 people show up every month to just dance their hearts out for an hour and then go home sober and well. Okay, great. If that is what the community is needing, then please go for it and set that up. I'll share a couple more examples of projects that have emerged over the last years. So that's what I've done in terms of Grounded, starting from the ground up. And it's been quite miraculous how much we've done with little resources. It's also one of our core values, creative, do a lot with very little. And I have to say that having shared values is another key, I think, condition for this to work. So you have on the one hand, the process and the structure, which I just explained, the feedback loops, the governance model, but you also have the culture. And I've started saying that culture eats structure for breakfast. So matching this empowering structure and process, we also have some shared values that we all agree on, such as the power of we. Together we can do it. Such as being creative, doing a lot with very little, willing to learn and to unlearn. And we have about 3 more. So these shared values and then transparent communication has been key for allowing this self-organization. Then next to Grounded and in collaboration with AMPed, we've also set up something called Local to Local Talents. And in this, we have matched all these excited young people to do work and research in the region. So together with Mark, we've guided about 100 or 1,000 or more students on their journeys, looking for their entry point in a career in food or nature. And personally, I've been able to guide about 420 people right now on this journey. And for me, that's one of the most exciting things when I can share this experience that I had myself, where it started with, oh no, shit, this is not going well with the world. I'm worried, to thinking, oh, I can do something about that. I can start here, and whoa, this door opens, that door opens, and it actually becomes something very exciting. And you can get active instead of anxious. And I think that's something I would recommend for most people, because indeed these transition topics, they can sound very scary and dooming and doom and gloom. But if the transition about is doing fun stuff and eating good food with nice people in beautiful, diverse places, hey, then let's figure this out together. Let's go on this journey. And so, yeah, I do recommend many people to get active rather than anxious. I'll also share some projects that we have co-created through local to local talents together with students and farmers. We've created new impact products. We've developed a vegetable juice in the colors of the rainbow. We've made to save the pear harvest by making a pear vodka. We do working on the land. We've done regenerative sheep grazing on Texel. All kinds of things that where you need this connection of the youth energy, but also this regional network of farmers. So let me list some examples of activities that we do with Grounded or things that have emerged. We have a whole plethora of workshops that we offer. Like I said, at Grounded, we are at the moment have about 600 active members. We're more than 40 nationalities. And if you ask each of these members, hey, who are you? What are you good at, or what can you teach, and what are you looking for? It's a complete abundance. So if we have so many different people with different backgrounds, different nationalities, people that are practically educated, people that are good academically educated, it's also an incredibly rich offer of what we can all teach each other. And that's something I see happening at a daily basis at Grounded. So things that have popped up, we do a lot with, of course, with health. So think about yoga, think about Tai Chi in the garden. We've done loads of workshops on fermentation, on preserving, on cooking, community dinners happening. One example which we organized, and actually Dan joined that 2 years ago, was a summer camp which we called Free the Soil. We mobilized a lot of people to raise their voices for 40 hectares of arable land around Amsterdam, which is threatened to be built on with distribution centra, which we think is just an incredible shame, because once those boxes are on there, I worry that we'll never get that land back. So what we were able to do in about 3 weeks' time is mobilize a group, create a 4-day program where we did working on the land. We had fun evening activities with dancing. We had good food. And one day we did this protest where we walked all behind the sound system on a truck onto these last arable hectares. And we made a big human art piece. So we walked as like a bird over this land. And yeah, we just do what we can. We do our best to make this positive impact. And we do see that this footage gets used a lot in the campaign to save this land. And 9 of these hectares are already definitely saved, where they're now working on creating like a food park. So this is quite positive and very interesting. We've done bigger festivals. We've had emergent projects like with the neighborhood, we do a spring and a winter festival, which has been really fun. We've been doing heaps of food activities, gardening, having community dinners. We've experimented with a community kitchen, and that's getting a really cool follow through. I'll share a bit in a moment. And then indeed, this working on the land has been something really key and also something that gets such great feedback. So we've just come back actually from our last summer camp where we helped a farmer who, actually the same farmer that gave me this entry point, William. He texted me, said, Maarten, it's an incredible pear harvest, and we won't manage to harvest them all on time. And again, in an afternoon of just texting everyone, we mobilized 70 people. We harvested for almost 10 days, and we picked more than 70,000 kilos of organic pears. And that's those moments where I think like, wow, I could have never done that by myself, but together we can really achieve a lot. And then you think, okay, well, the main thing is that we helped William, because William was really happy. Otherwise, those pears wouldn't have gotten harvested. But then there's actually so much deeper value as well, where people come up to me and they say, hey, I joined that harvest 3 years ago. Actually, that changed my life. Just as I'm now speaking to you guys, how working with William on the land has significantly impacted mine and put me on a very useful and interesting path. And I think that is really this silent impact that sometimes you don't even see, but can be so meaningful. People meet new friends with which they start new businesses. People, after harvesting for a week, decide to quit their jobs and start a new career path. So it's really quite a profound experience that bringing people to the land has and contributes. And also, when I do sum up the grounded concept in the shortest format, I say what we do is partying and planting. So also this summer, we started with organizing a festival. Very fun, great workshops, live bands, good food. Then we followed this inspiration with, again, activation. So we had 3 ecological action camps. We did forest restoration and management and crafting. We did community farming and food forest work. And we indeed ended with doing the pear harvest. So that's been a very action-filled summer and lots of activities. So here, what you see in the bottom left, and I'm so sorry I didn't manage to do the whole screen, is our first pilot where we did a community kitchen on the Utrecht Science Park. And what we proved, or what our aim was when starting this, was so can we do local ingredients, worldly flavors, where we reward the farmers for the valuable and high quality produce that they offer, where we create a fun working environment for the students, and where we still create more affordable and more healthy food than is the current offer. I don't know if anyone is familiar with the Dutch food culture, but there's a prevailing culture of cheese sandwiches for lunch. So that's why we thought, let's mix this up. And we have so many international students coming here and just cooking really great food, people bringing in recipes for the grandmas. And what I found really interesting about this pilot is that basically with this kitchen, with on a science campus where there's about 30,000 people visiting daily, we could create this demand that are supporting the community supported agriculture plots, our short food supply chain farmers in their transformation of the land. And by doing it together, we are actually able to make it a lot more affordable for the people buying food and reward the farmer more for producing the food. And because we're not sucking away a lot of value, which is going to the shareholders of the big catering companies, we actually noted, wow, there is something left over here that we can reinvest, we can support new projects with. And mind you, we did this 3-month pilot with very limited experience in running a proper restaurant. We've done our food trucks, we've done lots of catering activities, but a full-time restaurant, no, that was new. And even after 3 months, we had already broken even, and we're seeing a lot more opportunity to do things better and also thus collectively make it cheaper or be able to support more investments into local projects. And yeah, when I started seeing the potential of this, we were like, okay, what if we could take over the whole catering contract? That would be interesting. Because what happens right now is that the students, they go into the canteen, they buy something that often makes them, which is not healthy, let's say it like that. It's quite expensive. Then they bleep their card in the cashier machine, and poof, the money flies away. About 30% of it is lost to shareholders, to paying back banks, etc. So that's not staying in your region. And it's leaving, and the sickness of that unhealthy food stays. So it's a bad deal. So we started kind of with other student organizations, started thinking about, okay, but what if we could seize this means of production? Could we work towards a community-driven, co-owned food system on campus where we have a collaboration from the soil all the way to the belly, where we're co-owning this between the farmers, the workers, and the institution, so that we're all playing for the best team or for the same team with a shared goal of having the best food offer, namely healthy, positive for nature, and affordable. So that's something we're actively working on, and we're empowering a group of students who are continuing this mission on the campus while we are growing our community ground on a fortress, which I'll tell you more about. So one more thing I would like to share about the pictures that you're seeing at the moment, and that is also the activities we've really proactively with our youth community started organizing with and for the neighborhood. And this has been so valuable. So we've organized by now 4 winter festivals, 4 spring festivals. We do this together with some gardening initiatives, with our Grounded Collective, with artists, with a child care center, with an elderly care center. So really super rooted in the neighborhood. And it's attracting lots of diverse groups to these events. It's giving us a lot of support as well, because you can imagine, as a young organization, we need quite some backing for our license to operate. So having this tight neighborhood relationships that really support us has been super valuable. And also there we see how we pull people out of their everyday lives and then we bring them together in urban gardens. And in the left picture, you see a Congolese dancing workshop taking place. We had our food truck there, and then you're dancing there with students, with grandmas, with children. And yeah, that's why I draw the conclusion. Okay, if this is what the transition looks like, it's easy to get a lot of people to be a part of this. And as I mentioned before, we have one of our co-creation grounds on a old military fortress. It was built in the 1800s and part of the Dutch water defense line, which is really interesting. So you see how this is a landscape intervention, a massive collaboration that used the power of the water and the landscape to protect our cities, the power of nature being used in our favor. And we use this narrative, say, hey, this is something that we should do again. And it is linking in with these cultural narratives, our history, that's also allowing us to tell this story and to mobilize and connect also this regional movement and this regional network of people co-creating solutions from community kitchens to food forests and everything in between. And I think that is something that I'd really like to give along as well. What we're noting is that people don't quickly change their behavior because of the facts and the figures. They often change it because of their emotions. And these cultural narratives, creating these spaces of belonging, I think are super key in this. And another amazing element is they're positioned, these fortresses, right on the edge of the city and the countryside. So it's protecting beautiful biodiversity on the fortress. It's connecting city and countryside. And we use culture to pull people out of the city, motivate, train, etc. at the fortress, and then get them to nature. So from culture to nature. And here you see some of our friends dancing at one of the International Women's Day events. Here you see on top a whole agroforestry design that we've made, and indeed some of the harvesting of pears. This I've already shared, that we are organizing these harvest summer camps. And this is also something that I would love to share as a model with other youth organizations, because it's phenomenal, the input versus the output. Compared to organizing a festival, which is incredibly stressful and a lot of work. And yes, you might have thousands of people, a lot of noise and attention on that day. But the conversion of people that stick around and change their lives and do meaningful work afterwards is a lot lower than on organizing these campings. And organizing a camp, having workshops there, doing work on the land, and sometimes even being able to just send an invoice to a farmer for the work that we do on the land, to plant, to harvest, to dig. That is really becoming a great concept. And we've been doing this with groups of like 30 to 40 people. So you also really get a lot more quality time, a lot more in-depth connection, a lot more depth on content and training. And in that way, I think also a more profound impact on the participants of this. And again, to stress, it's a lot less stressful to organize. So these camps feel like a holiday for me as well, which has been incredibly valuable. So this is something where I'd love to see, can we make like a collaborative campaign of these action festivals and action campings, making sure we're all doing it in our own regions, but we can exchange and connect. So what does this look like? It looks like people having a good time, working the land, going swimming, eating good food, singing by the fire. This is just a nice life that many people like to join. And I think if that is the entry point, then you can deepen and deepen and deepen. But that entry point needs to be low barrier and easy to get excited about. That is something we've absolutely noted. So that's a lot on the really hyper-local grassroots from our student background organizing. And we've learned a lot from it, but we also know and note that we cannot do it alone. Just our youthful energy and as I say, I'm already 28 now, but we have all these 21-year-olds coming in as well, is not enough to be able to really change physically our region, but also to work together at scales that really work towards an alternative system of care. get to that later. So there's this need to collaborate with partners in the region so that the young motivated people can contribute to the practical projects such as community gardens, community farms, community kitchens, food forests, landscape interventions, working on improving water quality, all those kind of real projects. In the end, it is physical what needs to happen. It's not theoretical when we aim to solve these problems. So now I want to share a little bit on the work that we've been doing with AMPT. And this is something my colleague Mark Frederiks gave a talk to at the Bionutrient conference about a year ago. And it's sharing our process, what we've been doing on the ground, and we backtracked it, and from that kind of created a model for organizing regionally. So what have we been working around in our on our back? So what have we been working on in our own backyards right here is a just transition to a robust regional and regenerative food system in Amsterdam and Utrecht. And also here, you see quite big words because we figured it's important for people in many diverse ways to feel a part of this. And it's a movement. We didn't create a new institution or NGO. So it's just giving recognition and something for people to be a part of, and also acknowledging all the great people and things that are already happening in the region. Because there are great people doing great things in every city, in every rural region. And from our process of this regional organizing, we've come up with a model for basically mass decentralized collaboration. And we have different metaphors to express this in. I'll start with my favorite, which is the nature-based one. So also here, we always say, inspire. First, see who is there. And if you look at the right, you'll see this tree and the root systems. And we'll say inspire, it's like seeing who's all there in the soil. So we might have some people that are setting up community gardens. There are some people that are working on soup initiatives to create free soup in the city. There might be people working on a farmer pharmacy. And each time we see, wow, there's so much good happening already. So first phase, checking our underground network. Who's working on a regenerative, regional, just food system? Okay, mapping each of these initiatives. Then the second phase, activating them, asking, hey, who are you? What are you really good at? What resources have you developed? Do you have access to land? Do you have data? Do you have reach? Have you created a solution or a machine? So what is the inventory that you can give to the system? As every element in the soil, everything gives something to the network, but is also looking for something. So please, who are you and what can you offer? But also, what are you looking for? And from this sum of moving elements and seeing how they are connected, we then incidentally bring together our elements in the soil, our regional friends, to co-create regional interventions. So, and there we learn from the function of the plant. So the plant has its roots in the soil, and we can ask it a question. So I'll give an example. One project that we did was looking how could we create another food forest on the edge of the city of Utrecht. Okay, plant, put your roots in that bottom-up network, activate it, bring together the relevant elements and nutrients that we need to make this solution grow. So, for example, put it in a network. It was like, hey, there's Farmer Lauda. She had 2 hectares of monoculture cherry orchard, which was sick and which she was not doing anything with. Okay, then we put it, hey, there's the grounded kitchen on the campus. Hey, they could work with all those produce and process it, etc. Okay, cool. Hey, there's these people that are writing a food blog in the region. Hey, they could publicize about it. Hey, there's the logistical person already driving around for short food supply chain products. So you see, okay, how do we incidentally bring together the relevant soil elements, connect and strengthen what is working, and then co-create what's still missing? And every single time that we go through this process for setting up a project, we see that there's 80% of the solution already there. In our underground network, we've got the access to the land, to knowledge, to the hands and the feet that want to do the work. So often the real stuff is there. So then when we bring this together, we start to grow our solution. We look to the top-down world and we think, well, we only need a little bit still to help our plants grow. Could you please give us this last 20% in the form of some rain and some sunshine? And I guess you can imagine what the rain and sunshine are in this metaphor. But the rain is give it some money, and sunshine, give it attention. Help us break through a legal barrier. Help with a permit. And if it works, broadcast it. Make sure that this gets known far and wide. So also here, inspire, who's there? Activate, really onboard, take inventory, understand and build trust, deeply sharing not only what you can offer, but also what you're struggling with, which is a key factor in shaping true collaboration. And then incidentally bringing together the relevant parties, co-creating a solution, and if it works, sharing this wide. Now, of course, this natural metaphor, for me, it really resonates. I can imagine it, and I've gone through this process. But we've also developed this in the form of a game, and that allows us also to operationalize this project. So on the left, you'll see 4 levels, where level 1 is the individuals, level 2 is them connecting, collaborating regionally, and level 3 for us is the incidental co-creative space. And that's super key to not institutionalize that, to make sure this is an open co-creative space that's about incidental effective collaboration to come to the best solution. And from all that overview, we influence level 4, which is also really where the game rules are decided. And our current economy and governance is also very much a game. So how do we start playing this game with real value and real people? In the end, it's about trust and about facts. And there's more than enough to take care of everyone, making sure that we're housed and healthily fed, etc. But we have to organize it together. And that's absolutely the key and something we've been practicing and developing these models further on. I'll go a little bit faster now to the next pictures. So just how has this looked like over the last 5 years in and around the metropolitan region of Amsterdam? So also there we just got started. We've built a network of active farmer collectives and merged them into one collaborative short food supply chain network. So we brought them together in each of the regions. We've asked also them deeply, hey, what can you offer? Food, biodiversity, water storage, etc. But also, what are you looking for? Then we started to connect them all on a logistics and IT platform. So we were ready to go and deliver the city with good local food from multiple existing farmer collectives. And with the logistics, we set up first mile hubs. Oh man, it was so much work. It was really heaps and heaps of work, visiting all the farmers, getting all the products in the database, biking to catering companies to activate the city. And also there, we then hit quite a wall because Corona hit. So we were really ready to go business to business, deliver with all these farmers, and try to make this connection between the people that produce our food and the people that eat our food. Well, because of Corona, our original plan of focusing on business to business didn't go through. But something really interesting happened. Because there was an emergency, there was a short moment of real shortage of food in the supermarket. There was economic impact for many people in the city of Amsterdam. And because we had organized the farmer networks already, we were so adaptive to switch from delivering to business companies to setting up an action together with the Red Cross and deliver over 80,000 families of food. So this is something I'd also like to emphasize, that these regional and local food systems, I mean, they're not just cute and fun and awesome. No, this is offering real resilience. This is about resilience. This is about food security. And this is often even about maintaining a peace and organizing that we're safe together. And that got a lot of notes of a lot of social organizers in the city. They were like, oh, wow, wait, these farmers or the urban agriculturists got involved. Other stakeholders in the city got engaged. Institutions started working with us. Community kitchens started to work. And also then we asked, hey, people in the city, what can you offer? And what are you looking for? And we've noted that if we bring these lists of inventory together and we start matchmaking between the bottom-up network on the countryside and the bottom-up network in the city, that we have so many resources in our hands to physically transform and finance a lot of our region with a lot of regional interventions. And this is something we've been actively working on and we're seeing the results of. And it's been a very empowering process as well, because you tend to think, okay, if we want to make a positive impact, then we have to, I don't know, go get subsidies or ask the government for permission. But no, by just putting our cards on the table with this bottom-up movement, you're like, oh, wait a minute. So we already have access to land, to points of sale, to a workforce that wants to do it, knowledge on transition, ways to measure it. You're like, oh, okay, who do we need to ask permission to create the region that we want? Actually, no one. So that for me, actually, as a young person back then, was an incredibly empowering insight. And of course, it needs to happen regionally. That is the only place where we can truly grow, where we can truly experience community, where we can work with the soil. But we also noted that if you are only active in your own region, we still don't have the scale to fully create a new social economic system. So we've also seen the need to collaborate internationally as well and co-create between regions and initiatives. So we've been active with AMPT already in a whole bunch of European projects that have this goal to create a learning ecosystem of regional food networks. And we've been expanding on this actually over the last year, which will be the third chapter of my presentation. So just finishing a bit the regional context, I just showed you Amsterdam. Here we have Utrecht, so you'll see the science park, our fortresses, some of the community-supported agriculture initiatives that we support. And in the end, what do we see happening is that we're pulling motivated people out of the city, that we're connecting them at the gardens, at the kitchens, on the creative workplaces, and from that bringing them to work with ecology and food on the land, and that these good projects go back to feed the people in the city. And I think that's been a really powerful flow to see. And I find it really interesting how we use this old school social infrastructure, these fortresses, World Heritage sites, even to empower people and to restore landscapes. And this is something I'd be also very happy to share with other young leaders who are looking for a space to start their communities, to create safe grounds. And there are still a lot of empty fortresses and castles and monasteries and these things around. So I think that matchmaking is absolutely key. Couple more examples. We've done veggie rescue actions. We've made lots of these impact products. We've done festivals and indeed more than 80 initiatives. These are the students that are now running the community kitchen at the Science Park following our first pilot. And indeed, some of the examples, what we could have never set up by ourselves, but one was the concept of Pride Juice, and the other is setting up Operation Food Freedom Hubs. With AMPT, we've connected with socially connected people in neighborhoods to drop local food in the form of a pallet and making sure that it's quality, but also affordable by doing it together and by cutting out a lot of the middlemen. So here we go, continuing to inspire, to activate, and to co-create. Then luckily, and maybe I take a quick sip of water. Luckily, there's groovy people all over the world working on the same things. And as I said, it needs to happen locally. This is the only place where we can really fix ecological or social challenges, where we can plant a tree, harvest food, experience community. But it needs to happen everywhere all at once. And there is so much to learn. So we're seeing that in all regions around the world, there's people acting locally to build communities and organize these regional food systems. And you kind of start to feel part of this big movement of movements. And that's incredible because none of us can or want to do this by ourselves. But by connecting with other local leaders and seeing everything that's moving, you're like, oh, wow, actually, we're part of something big. It's not always easy. I mean, no money, struggles daily, but um, it does give you the feeling, okay, we're moving in the right direction and we're part of something big. And in that, we can also find some safety and know that we're not crazy, which is a very valuable insight. And now I'd like to share the last model that we've been working on here at AMPT. And it's our vision. It's called Common Source. And how do we look at all these sums of incredible initiatives, incredible people, incredible knowledge bases, and it's a complete abundance. It is so much. So how do we effectively organize mass participation and collaboration to heal the earth and the human spirit? And we're working on building a global network and learning ecosystem of bottom-up ecosystem restoration communities, regenerative agriculture initiatives, short food supply chains, even agri-businesses, and really looking at how do we create food, freedom, and abundance for all. And we always say it's all there, we just need to organize it together. On this process, we've even published and written a whole bunch of scientific publications on both the social processes, but also the needed digital infrastructure to facilitate this mass collaboration. And when we look at common source, we would see that there are a couple functionalities are absolutely key in creating this learning ecosystem. And we always say the little bulbs that you look at now, it's like looking at the plant that we drew that had its roots in the bottom-up network and its leaves to the institutional work. If you look at that from the top, so what we see are key ingredients is the local activities, call them living laboratories. I mean, every region, every community has different solutions in different stages of development. So that's where real things happen, where we work, where we try, where we bring people together. Building forth on the role of leadership. So we work, for example, here, the Bionutrient Associates take an absolutely leading role in pulling many people from trust into these spaces of collaboration. Then looking at each, taking, hey, what is the inventory? What is everyone bringing? What are we looking for? Then you note that you try your very best in your regional context to reach somehow a market to make a viable solution in whichever way that may look like. But then you note often you're at like an MVP level. You're like, okay, so one of the challenges we wanted to fix here is an educational program for water restoration in delta landscapes. Oh, okay, well, interesting. Well, we tried it a bit, but it's not fully there yet. Just in our region, we don't have all the knowledge and things to make the best training. So then we go to the writing office. And the writing office kind of curates collaboration and bringing together the right people with the right bits of knowledge and solutions at the right time. Also, they're strengthening and connecting what works. So, for example, if our ambition is to make this educational program, okay, let's see what they figured out in the UK, in Australia, in Brazil, in South Africa. Can we then bring together all our often like, MVPs, minimal viable products, merge them, come back to the best solution, and make that shareable. Make that a shareable solution to the other regions. So that's how you make it into a playbook for scaling, but also for monetizing all the value, the blood, sweat, and tears of investment that all these heroes in each of those regions have already put in to create bits of the solution, mixing them. So there's an incentive for innovation and for sharing, but by doing this in the form of smart contracts and with tokens, there's not a way of doing this in indefinite exploitation. Okay, then if we have a scalable solution or a shareable solution, how do we make sure we train the workforce of the future to be able to roll that out and implement it? And how do we make sure they get connected to those opportunities to do that physically? So it's like an iterative cycle of co-creating, learning, and continuously we are filling what we call common source, our shared source of blueprints, of motivated talents, of places, of networks. And what I found really interesting, I've been sharing this story to many different networks. One of the leaders I'm also working deeply with is John D. Liu, with the ecosystem restoration communities, the Eco Village network, and there's so many great networks. And note that we're in a time where we absolutely need to build bridges and tear down walls. So having the same conversation on what is this collaborative infrastructure looking like, and being able to share this with in a more nature-based language, in a more business-oriented language, and in a more science and policy-based language has been really interesting. So over the last years together, we've been engaging with multiple networks and aligning on this common source vision. So we've had the networks of the short food supply chains, hey, the Bionutrient network pulling in trusted leaders and practitioners as we speak, the ecosystem restoration movement, even agribusiness networks of companies looking for, also their role in the future of the food system. We've engaged with regenerative agriculture networks. The EYARA network is here in Europe. I think Josephine is speaking a bit later. Lots of youth networks, student communities, the scientific network, and we've even engaged with a whole network of festivals. So as I said, we've been doing them here, but luckily there's crazy people all over the world doing them. And that's, I think, what my biggest hope is, or what I see that we're working on together now. As this network of networks, we are working on the one hand on this mass inspiration, showing people, hey, it's possible, it's happening. through documentaries, through action festivals, through public speaking. It's possible, it's happening with the goal to get people to these local places, to these communities, to these farms for mass participation. Go and touch the soil, plant a tree, and think about what you want to do with your life. And connecting them, each of these initiatives, because each of these local projects, I see them as like an entry point, both where motivated individuals show up, but also where partners connect with because they want to collaborate, because you're taking this leading role, pioneering and doing new things in the region. So from these nodes, we see, hey, how do we connect them with shared social processes and digital infrastructure to follow this mass participation to limitless collaboration, co-creating solutions that support all of these local leaders in their efforts for planetary restoration. And I think this is a cycle that we see happening as we speak. And I hope that the more we connect, the more we can make this happen for basically make this happen faster and more accessible for more people. But I also often say the movement is moving. It is already happening and it's been happening for decades. But of course, every little element in this contributes. And I would love to see how can we make collaborative campaigns and where we can have all these diverse entities, all these different entry points in their own identity, in their own regional context, but connect these islands of hope in such a way that we have under the ground a massive collaborative network, just as nature has its mycelium. Okay, bye. So this mass inspiration, participation, and collaboration for planetary restoration. This is the goal. And one thing I'd like to invite people on to participate is something we've called Cities Leading Food Production. So we're rolling this out with multiple cities all over the world where we're looking at the city and its demand to inform the production and restoration and design of the land. So this is something where we're learning together with different cities, with different regions, and something that more and more people can participate in. So that's an invitation. And I'm just really excited to see how all of this and the hyperlocal organizing, the regional networks, and this global movement can really connect and empower the motivated, training them to do the work that needs to be done. We like to call this a talent journey. So I might come in at a grounded, think, oh wow, that's fun to join my life, or I might come in at La Junquera in Spain or at any other project, and you think, okay, I do want to do more with soil. Hey, check out this course from the Bionutrient Association. Check out this permaculture design course. Work, learn, volunteer, and you grow your own personal profile, which is yours. That's your journey. And the more your experience grows, the more you get matched to cooler working opportunities. So that's a journey we can realize by making use of all these existing content and platforms, etc., and enable that journey without the need of creating a new institution out of it. So it's all there, but it's just about connecting it. So thank you all very much for giving me the opportunity to share this work here. I'm sure there's more fun examples to share, but for the now, I would very much like to say thank you and say that you are the movement and together we can do it. Thanks a lot for the moment, and I'm eager to hear questions, comments, and just shoot them over via Dan or the chat.
That was totally inspiring, Maarten. It's really, yeah, I hope everyone's, I'm sure they obviously are feeling moved and touched and exhilarated by everything you've been doing, taking leadership and just walking the talk. Yeah, I don't even know where to jump in. I think, there's a few pieces here, and it's interesting to be somebody who's like 20 years older than you. And, like, like I still feel like I'm that young person, but I'm actually not. I don't have that. I don't
You are at
I'm
heart.
actually at a different point in my life. And yeah, I wish I was, had been around you and your work when I was your age. I think it would have been really beneficial for me. And I think that's the kind of thing a lot of people are wanting to be part of. And the reason I've been working with you and Mark now for the past couple of years is I think the framing and the structure of what you're doing and that level 1, 2, 3, 4. I think obviously Mark presented on that last year. It's on our YouTube page. People who want to listen go back to that. The common source has been, I think that was really the part that inspired me to work with you guys,
Mhm.
because we had started something along those lines at BFA in 2020 when COVID hit, and it became very evident that people were engaging primarily through electronic interface, which was kind of flabbergasting to me, but I guess maybe I was about 20 years late in realizing that. But yeah, this electronic, lens that we engage through is a dominant mode of interaction. And all the wonderful food in the world is nice, but if people aren't eating it with others, cooking it with others, growing it with others, etc., then what does it mean to be a human? And how do we, you know transition from a large amount of screen time to a more human based culture? And I think the gamification, um, that is at the essence of this process, it's for me, I haven't come across anybody else who's explained it more well. I think that's part of what I love about Mark, is that he just has a brain that he just sees it this way. So um
Brilliant.
yeah, I don't know. I think I want to delve more into that. Um I mean, maybe we can go back and forth and engage a conversation about where we're at in the process, and where common source is, and what's going on with BSV. Is that stuff you want to talk about? Or
Yeah,
um
I mean,
because
I,
there's a thing here that, maybe I'll just say where we're at with the BFA and the stuff with, what we started to do. We called mycelia in 2020, and we had some money, and we started working on this project, and we realized it was a really big, complex process to effectively, replicate Facebook and Instagram for the movement, and a bunch of other things. You know, like, the way I see it is, we have these these structures we engage in every day, whether we're conscious of it or not. When you go onto Facebook, when you engage in an online transaction, an electronic transaction, there's a whole structure of dynamics that you don't really think about when I mean, here in Europe, you just like literally touch your card to things and it just magically happens. Or
yeah,
people do it with their phone. It's ridiculous. Um, like, that actually channels energy in a certain kind of way, which is not necessarily in the interest of the collective well-being, similar to the social media, all the different platforms, etc. Like, there's algorithms in there which are not designed to facilitate the collective well-being. And so I'm not saying don't engage in electronic transactions. I'm not saying don't engage in electronic social transactions. But is it possible for us to have a framework by which we can engage these things in a way that is designed with the principles of life behind it, which I think is what you were talking about, quite well. And maybe that would be a fertile place for us to discuss for a few minutes.
sure thing. Um, so, I mean, yeah, so we've designing this very much from nature-based principles. So
Yeah,
when designing this digital landscape and adding the elements, which we call this gamification, which is having
yeah,
the levels, the characters, the inventory, the matchmaking, the challenges. And I mean,
yeah.
life is like one big game, right? We have places and we've got our
Call
health
it the game
covered in
of
the
life.
form of a bank account and we have rules made by the government. But what we're seeing is that the current way the game is organized is not working because the market doesn't care about the real value and the government's neither organizing that we have access to affordable food and houses and safety, etc. So that means it's up to the community to take charge and organize these things together.
Yeah,
To organize things together, what we need to have is a really robust method of building trust and a secure bookkeeping system that we're in charge of ourselves. And right now, you note that there all the technology exists, but it's being used by now by a Google or by LinkedIn or whomever to indeed make matches at the right time. But they use this to sell us plastic gugas at the right time. So and it's owned by a few. So it's also about who owns this infrastructure and who pays for using it. So if we flip that inside out, then we actually note if we look at the ability of organizing in regional context so that everybody has enough, if you have the real values of land, of food, of kitchens, hey, we can organize a higher quality of life for a lower price by organizing it together. But to organize it together, there's both the need indeed to have the trust building, the network building, all these social things, but also to have this shared bookkeeping system. And I
Yeah,
think that's something exciting that right now it exists. We have this. And that's maybe as compared to the movements in the 70s, that's something that's there now. And it can be used for good or it can be used for evil. But let's, with the people that want to use it for good, absolutely use it for good. And the last thing I want to say about that is, of course, it's about the physicality. What we also note is that people lose their mind sometimes at our garden when they just harvest a courgette. And I think that is because it's so real. And in the world of glass and screens and steel, the realness, it's just like, whoa. So I think in the end, it's about physical, but it is often a digital entry point how people get to know these initiatives. So if the digital infrastructure allows us to get people to and co-organize these alternative systems of care, which
yeah.
is, I think, absolutely important in this world where right now people often are isolated, and when you are isolated and people just want to take care of their families, out of being scared, you might right now find it more easy to march along to like the sound of far right and fascism and all these things that we see growing right now in the world. If you don't have a alternative system to care to fall back on, and that alternative system of care can mean childcare, can mean having your vegetable production, can mean having elderly care, etc. And organizing that together makes it a lot cheaper than paying the money right now, which you're already doing and paying into the institutions, to a supermarket, to a health company, etc. So we're already spending our money. We're just not spending in our reciprocal community networks. So there's more than enough. We're just giving it away.
I mean, it's our energy, it's our power. We're just actively being, sucked of it
Yeah.
because we're passively taking part in a structure that we didn't design and haven't taken proactive responsibility for co-creating. If I think I can, effectively
Yeah, yeah,
restate your point. You
absolutely.
said you said that we have the forms of bookkeeping. I don't think you actually explained it. I assume you're referring to BSV, or what are you
Yeah.
referring? So
Um,
let's take a deep breath here. This is a big deal.
this is a
I've
big,
yet to have anybody properly explain what the hell BSV is and its implications. And when I was exposed to this, I'm like, oh my God, this is what we've been waiting for. Does anybody really properly understand what this is and the implications? So can you mind just trying to see if we can walk through this and
yeah.
convey it
And
intelligibly? Because I don't think I've ever had anybody explain it intelligibly, much less in a recorded conversation. So
yeah,
let's
and I might be then curious whether we should make this whole conversation public to the whole world. But
well, choose what you
this
want to say or don't want to say.
this is
Uh,
definitely a
I,
trusted space.
yeah,
But what we see happening is right now we're basically being screwed left and right by the banks. Like if I call it flatly like that.
yeah.
And they're doing this on in a legal way and based on real assets and real value. And if I start by explaining how the system works at the moment, so for example, the Rabobank, which is the big agricultural bank based here in the
Rabobank.
Netherlands,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure you
yeah.
guys all know it. It takes
Not everybody does, but yeah, okay,
okay,
yeah.
it takes our savings, which are real euros, which we give to them. Then they build with that up some capital, which they then lend out to farmers. And the farmers get a loan for which the collateral is the soil position. So the bank says, as long as you are indebted, so you haven't paid back your loan, the collateral is that soil. And as long as you haven't paid it back, the bank owns that land position, which is then so value secure that they use that to um, basically leverage this and warrant their fractional reserve banking. So they say, we own 10 hectares of land, which is worth 1 million. Dear European Central Bank, look, that's a solid asset. Can I multiply times 100, which I can now lend out to more people, to us to finance our mortgages? So it's like, wait, wait, wait. So you're taking my
Based
save.
on our savings to begin with, or
Yeah,
our retirement accounts or whatever.
you start with something. They start
Yeah,
actually with our money,
yeah,
which we give to them. They say there's theirs. Then they put a farmer in debt. based on the depth and the soil value of that loan, they can create more money.
Yeah.
And that's right now happening quite blindly. So you're like, okay, well, that's not a very good model. Could we do that ourselves? And we think if we collaborate between the bodem, the boer, the burger, the buik, so the soil, the farmer, the citizen, the belly, then we have enough value and trust and collaboration and resources to basically create a regional bank or regional fund. And allowing the technology what we have right now, or which is quite far, allows everyone to have their own sovereign identity and be able to make transactions between those sovereign identities. So it's basically internet, but you don't just have your profile at Facebook and your profile at Instagram or etc. You have your own identity and you have a wallet. So you can, with your own identity, transfer through a lot of networks and platforms, build up your experiences, your profiles, and you can make transactions peer to peer with people you trust. So that's I think the main game. It allows you to make agreements and transactions with people you trust without the need of a big institution. So basically, there's the robustness to create an alternative economic model in this, which is peer-to-peer, which is trusted, and where money is based on the increase in ecological function. And it's incredibly scalable. So that's why I'm a bit nervous on sharing all of this. It could be a real alternative to the current private banking system.
It is foundational, I think, to systemic, cultural flourishing
Yeah.
is us to literally take our power back, and we have these structures by which unconsciously we've given our power away and we've given our identity away. I
We've
mean,
given it like,
it's what do they say? If you're not paying for it, somebody's
yeah, you are the product, you know. This
part
is
of the
this is
product.
really what's happening.
But just unpack this for a second, your identity, right? I mean, so people may be familiar with the fact that, some people have a Facebook profile and they may have a Instagram profile. They have friends there and they have, things they've done and things they've said. And you've got a LinkedIn or a TikTok or whatever all these things are. Maybe you've got a Google profile or, an Apple profile. These are things you've done, things you've seen, things you've bought, things you've communicated that you can't take with you.
No.
They are actually pieces of information which belong to a corporation, which is then selling them to others.
Yeah.
So, as I've said to people, as I've tried to explain this concept, like when a new social media platform comes along and it gets enough critical mass, people jump on board, and pretty soon you got 100 million people
Yeah.
that are on TikTok or whatever it is. Like, we could build a new social media
Yes.
pro platform that was predicated on the fact that you own who you are and you take that with you, right? If we, the people, were to build these things,
Mm-hmm.
our collective good, we have the capacity to do that. And
Yeah.
and with our money and all this, I mean, so
And think about the amount of
the
value that.
model of symbiosis is a model of nature. It's not a model of colonization and
Mm-mm.
harvesting of life force, and I win by you losing. It's a model of, we actually have and share and coordinate, and we're more together. And there's a really important piece here. That we have all the functional capacity between us to do this. It's kind of like quorum sensing. I keep using the term quorum sensing, and people know the concept. It's, you know, when there's microbes in the soil are have, gone through mass genocide, somebody's tilled, somebody's applied, fungicide
Mm-hmm.
is, and there's these little communities here, little communities there, and the azotobacter, not the azotobacter, the Phytophthora is, based on the dynamics, a pathogen. When you get enough species of plants growing together and each of their own diverse microbiomes, all of a sudden you get this really broad spectrum of species present. And pretty soon, Phytophthora realizes it's in its best interest to be symbiotic, not pathogenic. And it shifts. It's when we have that collective who realize, hey, we're all here together, we're all different, we all
Yeah.
have relevant value. It's in our collective best interest to collaborate, that something
Absolutely.
flips. And that's when you get the drought resilience. That's when you get the flood resilience. That's when you get the pest and disease resilience. That's when you get the better yields. That's when you don't have to apply fertilizer to get harvests. when you have that diversity in symbiosis.
And this is one-on-one
And
true
this is
for our
effectively what
social
we're talking about.
networks. This
What's
is
that?
this is one-on-one true for the social networks. If we have the diversity and connectivity, we have the adaptability and the resilience, and indeed there's more than enough. And just to
It's our
emphasize,
energy, and we're just actively, well, unconsciously in most cases, engaging in it being harvested.
yeah,
And what you were showing with these local grounded ecosystems of your community, what you've walked, the walk you've walked over the past 7 years of stepping in, engaging, facilitating co-creation. If we had all these ecosystems, which we do, all these people around the world, I'm constantly traveling the world these days, and there's amazing people everywhere, and they're all doing
everywhere.
amazing stuff. And I happen to be in a place where I'm privileged enough to be able to bop across countries and across continents. And like I go into a room in this country and everybody's like, hey Dan, I go into next day, new country. Hey Dan. Like
Well,
literally, it's like 3 countries in 3 days right now. But um
this is something, this is a frustration I sometimes share where I'm like, whoa, how can I have all of this in my head right now? Everybody should know this, that it's happening everywhere all at
if
once.
we had this electronic framework
Yeah.
where people could have their identities, which they shared, and we could facilitate that cross-pollination through this electronic framework, I think that symbiosis could happen extraordinarily rapidly across the planet. So
Yeah, no, I think this is really interesting and a little nice quote for how could we have our own real social platforms rather than a digitally owned real estate by a few in which we get exploited every time we try to pass for a service. So how do we make sure that we build this infrastructure in a way that you don't get exploited and profited on for your eyeballs, but you get rewarded for your contribution and your interaction and your connection? Because
which
these
facilitates
services,
in the real world engagement,
yeah, because
right?
these services
We're
are
trying to
cool,
get
right?
here.
eBay helps you connect to cheaper goods that are used to buy, or Airbnb. Wow, how can we have flexible living? But right now, for using that service, they take 30% and put it in their pocket. This is crazy. We can build these kind of services and co-use them together. And to just emphasize your point earlier about the identity, that's always how I imagine this talent journey as well. So it's not that I make my account just at the Bionutrient Association or just at the Soil Food Web. I'm just Maarten. I started my journey. Hey, I'm 21. I just got out of school. Cool. Oh, this is a fun festival. Wow, interesting. Hey, I want to do more with this. Let me go take this course. Let me take this volunteering opportunity there. Let me do a work away. And I'm working, I'm growing, I'm learning. And the richer, basically, the more stripes I earn of proof of work, the richer my profile, which I own, which is my identity, which is my experience, gets, the more connected I get to other opportunities. So once I've done a landscape design training and I've become expert at water retention landscapes, then there's a big project emerging to do restoration efforts for the Mediterranean basin. Oh, wow, then I can access that. So I think also this path and drawing that out
Yeah.
shows where's the entry point and what's the perspective for growth, but also this offer of a secure livelihood while doing good in it. And I think that's absolutely key. And then the last thing about this technology is also what I earlier said, like, okay, if we can have our bookkeeping regionally happen, that means we can correlate money also with real values, with water storage, or hey, I think the bionutrient indicator can be a really interesting indicator to use for example, looking at such a regional bank so that we get, 1,000 families put 1,000 euros, we have 1 million, we lend it to the farmer. The collateral is the soil position. We put that in our bank book. So we say, well, collectively now with the whole community, we own those 10 hectares. But we don't blindly go to the European Central Bank and say, do it times 50 or times 100 or whatever it is. We say, no, we are also the market of that same farm. And every time that the nutritional density would increase, then we could lend out more money, for example, to finance our own mortgages. So then you start to see how much abundance there is. And actually, if you're working along in this system and we're filling that regional fund by the work we do, the food we buy, the childcare services, etc., and we can actually liberate ourselves, create money based on the increase in ecological function, and find safety because we look at organizing housing, energy, food.
Yeah.
Um, and this is something that we're also, yeah, really actively working on here. So Right now, still on our fortress, we're upgrading the community kitchen. We have a greening company that does like ecological work in yards, but also on the countryside. We do the events and the culture space. But with many young people right now, we're looking, and with the landowners and the ambitions in the region, we're saying, okay, where can we build a food, energy, water autonomous neighborhood? And it's a heap of a struggle to organize the trust and the facts to get there. But the more I calculate, I'm like, wait, no, indeed, we can have a high quality of life for a very low price, but
Yeah,
we got to do it together. And yeah, that's a
yeah,
process we're in. And luckily, there's, like I said, there's so much to learn and it's not always easy. But indeed, luckily, there's people doing these things all over the world all at once. And we all have bits of the puzzle in just a different stage of development. So also this common source framework for this incidental effective co-creation of these template solutions, models, yeah, it's something really rewarding. And it's, yeah, it's a relaxing thought actually that no one needs to do this alone. It's being worked on all corners and so many fronts, and you'll see that as well.
yeah. No, I think, I mean, I think we're getting the basic gist conveyed here in this back and forth. So I feel really good to be able to have got it captured at least a little bit, because I try and stumble over trying to convey this when I go and speak, and I'm talking about land tenure and autonomy
Yeah,
and, you know,
community land
raise,
trusts, all
raise
these things.
families in peace and, you know, not be wage slaves. And I don't say it anywhere near as elegantly as this. I think the gamification, the level one, the level two, level three, level four, people can go back to that and look at that and see how that engages and how
It's
they
like the
feel
metabolism.
and how we plug in. But I mean, do you want to talk about the logistics of the electronic infrastructure, or leave that off for now?
I mean, to be honest, I'm not a super expert on the digital infrastructure myself and really the technicalities of it and the the size, but all we can say is that we are working here with some partners that have the most robust, energy efficient, and trusted tech to make sure that all
Yeah,
the knowledge that is made shareable is
yeah.
safe and it's also very energy effective. So yeah, I'm much more on the systemic and the social design, and we feed this to technician to the technologists that are making the digital infrastructure.
Well, I'll say that this is something that I'm aware of and I'm engaged in to some degree, not as much as I'd like to be. Got my finger in a few too many pots, but you know, I see this to be as a categorical, systemic phase shift piece of the puzzle, that as and when this gets built out and operationalized, it really, you know, will just completely um establish a new zero. You know, it's
And
a paradigm shifting framework, and
okay,
it's
and the last thing I'm
process.
going to
Yeah.
share about it, and I mean, I'm sharing, is that it can go really, really fast. So
Yeah.
we work with one of the more poorer neighborhoods in Amsterdam. 170,000 people live there. Per day, they all spend €4 in the supermarket,
Mm.
in the Jumbo, the Albert Heijn, etc. Of that, €4, a lot, of course, needs to pay costs of things, of the vans that are driving, the gasoline, the workers, etc. But about 30% just evaporates into finance, paying back interest to banks, to giving it to shareholder value. So if even in the poorest neighborhood, we have, well, one of those €4, that 30%. So if we say we start spending these €4 not in the supermarket, but in our regional food cooperative, then everyone needs to get their costs paid. So the €3 go to paying the farmer, the logistics, etc. But that €1 that now evaporates, hey, that we could put in this regional fund. So think about that. Even in the poorest neighborhood, that's €170,000 a day. That means you could refinance every day almost 2 hectares. Okay, and that's a pace at which, and yeah, as we just explained the systemic implications of this. So once we start to reconnect land, labor, and ownership, ooh, it can take away very quickly the power of the current system. Because I must also say, I think the current system, it's, in all fairness, it's not real. It's bullshit. It's made up, it's agreed upon, and it's taking so much energy.
Game rules. They're game rules that we operate in without ever actually understanding from birth
you
you know,
see the might and the energy that's needed to keep it in stand, to keep that alive. I think if we crack the fact that we can organize together in a more natural way, that will take a lot less energy to keep it that way as the current system does now. So that I find a bit of a hopeful thought as well.
yeah, brilliant. Thank you for indulging me in this, sort of um, yeah, unpacking. I think it's a really, really important piece of this deeper puzzle. But what you're at, where you're doing this sort of modeling of what anybody can do, which is just get out and engage, and obviously when you don't have family and a mortgage and all that kind of stuff, you maybe have a little more freedom to do that. And but there's a lot of youth that are, really hungry for viable options. And I think what you're doing is just, and have done, is something that is really inspiring.
Bringing together these different generations on these places of purpose is also just incredibly empowering. I think indeed having the youth and people that are maybe more already retired together, yeah, you see that's where so much magic happens. They always get along great.
Yeah.
We even once organized a bring your own grandma day at the fortress to we call them ancient future skills. So ancient skills for future resilience, like repairing your own clothes, growing your own food, doing fermentations, making sauces, all these kind of things. And it was like, I don't know, there was this great excitement of, wow, we can totally take care of ourselves, of each other, and we do make our own region.
And
Um,
what the grandparents want to do, then, be engaged and be useful and help out
they had a
and
blast.
share. And isn't that what kids have always been missing in their whole scholastic experience, is actually elders sharing practical skills? Isn't that what kids really, really deeply want, is practical skills shared by elders? Yeah, beautiful. I see you reading some of the texts in
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
chat. Do you want to comment on any of them?
I mean, I think I see a question from the UK, which is really interesting indeed. On yeah, class is a big thing, and the affordability of food. We encounter that as well. We also see that within our own community. There's and things are getting more and more expensive. It's really so frustrating. And people are really struggling to get by. So I think it's very key to always meet people where they are. And that means the offer needs to be cheaper, better food now, not some promise of systemic change, of impact or biodiversity. And that's for the majority of people. And I think we can create these conditions. We're seeing it, for example, with Operation Food Freedom pallet. It's about a third the price of the supermarket, better quality. So that's for us again, inspiration. Hey, affordable food, a lot for little. But then you engage people. Hey, they come pick it up every week. You start to chat. Hey, who are you? What are you good at? What are you looking for? And they're like, well, I used to be a gardener back in Turkey. I had a farm of this. I used to be an or I did this. You're like, oh, wait, wow. So also there, then you start to deepen with people to co-create, and perhaps the idea will flow from that to have this morph into a community kitchen or into a new community garden. So it's also this entry point engagement and going. And then my question is indeed, how can we make sure that these systems of care are being created? Because I guess I also am very aware of my own privilege. I've had the opportunity to take these risks, to go for this organizing, to have the space in my studies to read all the books and check all the YouTube videos I wanted. And it's allowed me to now build this community ground where we have a garden and food and everything is, you can just be there for free. Um, and so I think that's an interesting question. How do we connect perhaps I have no idea what the numbers are, but the 1% really motivated of the X% privilege, let's say the top 10%, how do we empower and connect them to create the conditions so that the other 80 or 70% can step into this? Because people who are living paycheck to paycheck, you can't ask them to do more or less. But if there's a way to engage, to get the food to work along, I think then we make a really good chance to reaching this critical mass.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think this is, yeah. There's a couple things I want to say. I see a text from Julia here referring to Hilo.
Yeah.
And Hilo was the platform that we at the BFA helped stand up through the Terran Collective in 2020. And it was the best thing that we'd found that would accomplish this objective. And that was exactly why we were put the energy behind it. And they had the holo chain, which was
Yeah.
a dynamic where you had, all your data was actually in a, hard drive in your house, and everything was decentralized. It wasn't on AWS. There was a bunch of pieces, which is why we chose that. But I think, um, yeah, the BSV is it's got a hell of a lot more there to play with. But yeah, there's a whole ecosystem here of
And
all
that's
types.
the great part, right? There's so many people working on these solutions, which I think is also, yeah, no one needs to say, we're going to do this now. This needs to happen also in very decentralized in many different ways. And we see a lot of other partners also working on alternative economy, new digital infrastructure. And I do also hope, and I think that a lot of these initiatives will inevitably become interoperable. So, right, everybody's still building and innovating and
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's. I mean, as I didn't know much about software when I got involved in all this, but there's a thing called a tech stack, um, which basically means you need this level of function and this level of function and this level of function and that level of function. And it's not like one software piece has everything. There's actually a whole bunch of different things. And so this group's working on this group's working on that. Actually, again, the model of nature in symbiosis, these different functions can be webbed together into one more holistic, um, systemic whole. Let's put it that way.
exactly.
Um, all right. Emma says, I deliberately don't engage with any social media as they are currently constructed quasi-competitive element and potential for toxicity. So where this conversation is going sounds much more compelling. Yeah, I as well, Emma.
No,
I literally, I mean, it's embarrassing because that there are accounts with my name on them, but don't know how to actually engage in any platforms. I'm completely inept. But
no,
it's again in part because I'm philosophically opposed to it. I engage, at arm's length because I understand a lot of attention is there, but it's really um, done with a little bit of distaste. So yeah. Well, so I mean, usually in the last half hour we move to questions, and so we've only got two questions in the Q&A box, but that generally is where we ask people to post their questions. So anybody who wants to, feel free to pipe in there. Tom started off fairly well earlier in the presentation, how to establish this in the United States. I think he was talking about everything you're doing with local to local and across Amsterdam. I have a small organic farm in Western Illinois that would benefit from, I guess, engaging with urban communities, et cetera. So you said you've been partnering with cities around the planet. Do you want to talk about how that structure is proceeding and how you're doing
absolutely.
this practical work even without the broader social electronic infrastructure in place?
Yeah. So I mean, just for this, I think again, the realness is going to be the scarce good, and that's what we should also always be focused on, where the digital is just supporting and facilitating. But then when I read your question, Tom, how to establish this in the United States, and amazing that you're already having this organic farm, and I of course have no idea where that's exactly located.
In the
Um,
middle. Yeah,
in the
close to
middle of,
Chicago is in Illinois, if you know where
yeah,
Chicago is.
that I know,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, yeah.
But I have no idea what the like proximity is to a city. But what I would say for my first chapter, so this hyper-local community organizing, I do think there's an element of leadership that's very key. Having somebody that's crazy enough to say, "Hey, I'll go and do it," and everybody come along. And what I found was a key way for me, because I'm not really a boss or a director. I call myself more of a cheerleader. So I think you can do it. So what I always was able to do is say, guys, I think this is possible, but I don't know how. And that allowed a lot of people to take ownership and charge themselves. And that transfer, I think, is very key. So using your leadership position to empower others. I do then think the cycle of inspire, activate, co-create, whoa, it inspires again is relevant. I would advise the holacracy governance model mixed with shared values and good empowering culture. So that's on the community organizing. Then I think when it comes, okay, how do we really at scale make regional interventions, short food supply chains, and regional food economies? Yeah, then maybe it's really key to start from the city, and engage there with stakeholders, with companies, with on-the-ground initiatives, and start to really understand the demand there, and from that demand inform the actions and activities on the land. And of course, in the city, we'll find people. There is money. There's people that are willing to pay for healthy food, etc. And we're seeing that this works at different scales. So through the city's leading food production program, we've initiated this together with the Royal Jaarbeurs here in Utrecht. And it's starting with a program where we're visiting 4 cities, but also already 10 African cities have joined, and it's really picking up speed. So we visited Bangkok. We'll be heading to Abu Dhabi even in a couple of weeks for this, where there's also a huge challenge on food security, on
Yeah,
peace,
yeah, yeah.
and these topics. We'll head to Rwanda. There will be an event in Utrecht, and then indeed 10 other African cities have already joined, and we're in conversations with cities in the United States as well. So we see that more and more cities are taking charge, both from a policy perspective, but also from a citizen perspective on food production. So this was always a topic, of the bigger regions or the federals or etc. But you note that the cities note, oh wow, if we want to make sure that we have healthy citizens, if we have tolerable cities, if we want to be flood resistant, etc., we need to take charge on that landscape around the city. So that's just a change in dynamic as well. So I think that program would be really interesting to join, because there with these cities, it's both learning, of course, it's a lot also with data find from the needs of these cities. And it's a way for mass stakeholder engagement so that you can reorganize without, obeying the current institutions. So those, I guess, are some beginnings, and I would love to talk more. I'm really curious where you're based in Illinois. And
Yeah, well, I'll just say I think I know Western Illinois. My mother grew up there, and it
yeah,
is fairly rural.
yeah,
Um, average property scales, hundreds, thousands of acres. A lot of people leaving the land and going to cities. So it seems like part of the magic sauce in your model or your experience has been starting with an area where there's a whole bunch of young people that maybe are being supported through going to university, have some free time, don't have to work, have that vitality and creativity and openness, and aren't structured in their lives per se. Um, so if you're, in a rural area with not a lot of people, I mean, I would say that's where people belong. And the end game is getting people from the urban
yeah,
concentrated
yeah, yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
land, but getting from where the the fertile energy is
I
back out.
really hope we start to see this like reverse brain drain for people coming from the cities back to the rural side, because you'll have a more high quality of life there. And actually interesting to look also into the urban rural bridge program that China has been implementing. So there's some good examples there as well. Um, but what I wanted to say is that to bring people out of these cities, well, you can start with these incidental experiments. People drive to Burning Man. Why wouldn't they drive also a whole while to go to Churning Man? Little word joke. Um, so we've been doing this in these incidental action festivals to get people out of the city onto the countryside, or in the form of these summer camps, which in the States I think is a very well-known concept. To have people have that experience, and then there needs to be the perspective for them to work and grow into a secure livelihood while doing good. So what you don't have in the city is space, is access to land, is etc. So if we can get people outside in this first inspiration, if they can get education and then they find space where they can establish new, indeed, community land trusts, co-living situations, etc., that would be a way to repopulate that countryside and make it more of like a mosaic landscape. And then you also bring culture back to, or also city type culture, I guess, to the countryside. There's always culture in the countryside. So I don't think it will happen overnight like that, but I don't see simply the distance to be a barrier to have this city rural collaboration.
Yeah, I've been doing that on my farm recently, and having people from Boston come out, and it's wonderful to have people from the urban core who don't have access to land, and a lot of them young, out on the land. It brings a whole bunch of energy. I think the land loves having more people out there, and yeah, again, that land tenure, that ability
Mm.
to not just have it be a place you visit, but a place you can put down roots and own or have rights to if in a long-term lease or whatever, I think is a important piece of the puzzle. Um, Emma says one of the challenges is that people in our communities are not equally equipped in terms of having the time or their essential needs met to have the capacity to take part in a more regenerative way of life. How do we engage those who haven't yet got with the program? How do we engage them? Maybe you already touched on that. I think it was a different point she'd made.
Yeah, but indeed, it needs to be, that first need needs to be addressed. It needs to be better, cheaper, more fun now, would be my answer. And indeed, especially also, yeah, for me, that is food is a huge thing there. Like we note actually, as long as we cook, we people don't care what we're gonna do. Are we gonna harvest pears? Okay. Are we gonna build compost toilets? Great. Are we gonna go sweep the streets? Sure. As long as there is this social element and you provide good food with it, people show up. So addressing this first need and also keeping that really practical is, I think, very, very key.
When we were talking about you coming on to present here at this conference, you
Mm.
were referencing something you have with a trailer, and you're like, I can go out with a trailer and a couple pots and pans. Do you want to just walk us through that logic path or that like that storyline? Because at least the way you conveyed it 3, 4 months ago was pretty inspiring to me.
When we were in England together.
Was that what it was? Yeah,
I think so,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been calling it mobile social infrastructure. And what I believe, and this is something if anyone here in the group wants to work on this with me, because we've been doing this locally, we see other organizations doing it all over the place. But what we've developed and what we also use to do our harvest or our action ecological summer camps is a mobile infrastructure. So what do we have? It's a it's a van, it's a trailer, and in that we have everything to pull up in a barren piece of land, and we can immediately set up, hey, base camp, nice tent where everyone is in, all the equipment to build a field kitchen, have equipment and tools for people to do the work. And so we've figured if we invest in this infrastructure, the activities will become cheaper and cheaper. And it's actually true. Like we've, with the help of a tiny grant, been able to invest in the infrastructure. And now the costs for organizing one of these week-long action campaigns for people, they only need to pay 45 euros for like 7 days of food 3 times a day, content, new experiences, workshops, fun. And why? Because then it comes, sometimes the produce gets gifted from a farmer who had something left over. And so it's just so practical. And we've been using this here locally now in the Netherlands, but I would love to see a collaborative campaign where we could connect event organizers with land-based projects, communities, farms, etc., where they say, hey, this is how many people we can host. This is the work that needs to be done. That can be digging swales, it can be planting, it can be harvesting, whatever. That we prepared that well to basically draw out the roadmap from what to visit, when, which, where, how many people, that we connect the event organizers with the community places, and that anywhere, if you prepare it and there's a design and an action plan, you could pop up and pop, put an action festival infrastructure just like this, get hundreds of volunteers in doing the work, and if people get excited, connecting them to the trainings to also become an expert doing professional work in these fields. And that's something I would find incredible to set up, having this collaborative campaign of action festivals to heal the earth and the human spirit. And they can happen asynchronously, all in their own name and vibe. But if we have the same underneath mycelial digital infrastructure to follow up,
Yeah.
that would be brilliant. And I thought it would be hilarious if at least somehow next to all that digital connectivity, we do have a physical moving circus visiting these places so that people who are curious, and that's when people show up at Grounded. So from my own experience, like, what do I do now with my life? Start following the regenerative circus, walk along, plant a tree, and find your route into education and work. That's something that I can totally see happening. And in general, I see that investing in the social infrastructure so that we can grow food, cook food, build things, etc. That is a really smart way to go because that makes all the following things become cheaper and cheaper.
Yeah.
Um,
I think
and
it's just totally brilliant. That's just absolutely totally brilliant what you just said. I think I can feel people getting excited listening to what you're saying, and that's not the people that are down the road 5 years into the future listening to the recording, like people on the call right now. Do you have this conveyed in any way, shape, or form that someone could look at, can find it
Yeah,
on the website, can reach out to you? I think I sense excitement.
in this phase, reach out to me, please. I think what we're doing now is a process of commitment pooling of places, of organizers, of infrastructure, of tools, of networks. So if we turn up with event organizers all over the world and we all call our shared network of artists, and I don't ask them, hey, don't sing for Grounded, but sing for the earth. And we all do that. You have this massive pool of reach and of resources. And of course, then with that, we could look at, okay, what kind of sponsorships, what kind of broadcasting channels, what kind of matching funds could we do? But let's start from the realness, start from the real connections and the real resources, and then perhaps look for matching funds for that or seeding such a commitment pool. It's not formalized at this moment anywhere. It's loosely happening left and right, but we're in this phase of
Pictures.
pooling our commitments. And
Yeah.
one explicit thing I would like to say is I did go together with John Liu on invitation to South Africa to an amazing festival there, Green Pop Reforestation Festival. They've been doing it for 15 years. Felt like our older brother a bit in the action festival sense. And we came together with community and event organizers from all over the world and explored this concept of how can we use cultural activation for ecosystem restoration. So there is this cohort forming and exploring this. So for the moment, just please reach out to me if you're keen to work on this.
How are people going to be able to reach out to you?
Can I just put my my
Put
phone
it,
number
put it,
here in
put it,
the chat?
put it text. Okay. Yeah. You don't want to send all the,
Um, and this
yeah.
was also together. Oh, sorry, that went very quick. And this was
That plus
also,
31 is a country code for those who aren't
yeah,
used to
I
talking
can't do two.
outside of the US or whatever. Yeah.
Um, sorry.
WhatsApp is a common phone number
There we
infrastructure
go.
world
Yeah,
used.
WhatsApp is the best. There's the phone number and the email. And
Yeah.
this has been also supported by the UNCCD, the United Nations Convention on Combating Desertification. And I found the interesting starting talk. I found fantastic because they were like, we set all these goals to restore 1 billion hectares 30 years ago. We've had like 26 summits to talk about it. And now, not that many hectares have been restored yet. So the only thing that can do this is loads of hands and feet, loads and loads and loads. It's physical, and yes, you can do some machining, etc. So from that, they also came to the conclusion: oh, we need this cultural activation to mobilize this massive herd of people to do this work for ecosystem restoration.
Yeah. Beautiful. I'm gonna say, so Julia has made a few comments here. I'm gonna read one of her questions.
Mhm.
Maybe you've already addressed it. I'm a recent college grad, mid-20s, and currently reside in the U.S. Southeastern college town, different from the university I graduated. Not super urban, and some rural county nearby, or maybe country. I want to take advantage of the exact young college energy here. Where might you suggest I get started in establishing something like this? Meeting people at the farmers market, making posters? What do you think?
Just this week, we did for example, on our campus. Yeah, so you're in a college town. I did a pear review on the food system on campus. So we got all the pears that we harvested, and we went with a mobile bicycle and with a sound system and about 10 students with all our pears. And we started handing it out, the pears, to our peers. And we just asked them, hey, yo, do you want to help us make a better food system here? Here's a peer. Please fill in the questionnaire. And then we got several hundred results. And quarter of the people that filled it in wanted to volunteer. We got information on how much they were willing to pay for a filling community meal. Um, so it was really like when you look at those results, you're like, oh, whoa, that's a lot of value. So that practical organizing events for us has always been a successful way to, yeah, just combining it with fun activities as well. You know, can we be dancing? Is there a concert? um, really on these cultural elements. So those are just some first ideas,
Yeah, well, I
and
think
posters can be part of it, sure.
there's nothing like experiencing it too. Like it's a concept in your head, but I mean, I'm guessing if someone ever wanted to get their butt all the way over to Utrecht in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, you might be able to put them up or find a place for them to stay, and they can experience the culture and the vibe. It really is visceral when you go hang out at your fortress. The energy there, it really is quite something
That's,
to experience.
that's
So
really nice that you say that. And just very practically, what I did in the very beginning when I was just 20 years old and had this first idea, let's do a festival. We just sat with four people. We all thought, okay, which people could help us to do this? We've never done a festival before, no idea. We put them all in one WhatsApp group and said, yo, we're going to do a festival. Everybody came to a play and we just started from there. Like it was that practical. But doing something together, that's the key. And I don't think it doesn't need to be a festival, but when you note that with your peers, with your hands, you manifest something physically, that's a life-changing experience. I think ever since that, we have known that it's up to us. We can make our own lives. And I think that has been the empowering feeling that really then afterwards became this virtuous cycle of engaging more and more people.
yeah, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna read a couple more questions here. Donald says, I think it is the courage, I think it's the courage to step into the void and begin. Take that first step. That's basically exactly what you're saying.
I agree.
As an older man, I guess it's looking for the opportunities to get involved. Um, and Emma says in response, as a community organizer, activist organizer, I'd love to have more Donalds willing to come along and get stuck in. I do a
Yeah.
vast amount of reaching out to people when running a local event, such as an apple juicing or picking, pruning, and preserving event. But I don't find people necessarily have the social confidence to come along. How to break that? And I will say Emma has been an amazing local organizer to support
Oh,
the BFA in our work in
fantastic.
England and Wales. And she's absolutely, if you ever want anything done in that part of the world, just reach out to Emma. She's like complete manifest.
Well, oh, groovy.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
yeah. Absolutely. If you need a contact, yeah, right in Eastern
All right,
Wales.
I hope to be over
Got
there
somebody.
this
Yeah,
year.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I'm not sure if there's any comment or response you want to make to that point.
I mean, I just want to, I guess, so first of all, we need more. Yeah, we do need each other and this intergenerational collaboration as well. Like, I also want to emphasize that for myself in this journey, it's been incredible to have the help and the support of some really important mentors in the way. So I think that matchmaking, where I know that they're really motivated, some of these people, and I guess me included at the beginning, they go above and beyond. And those who want to give more attention and connect to more experienced people to then have these more experienced people, one, be able to transfer a bit of their knowledge there, but also give access to their network. So then you can pull up the strings and go, to the next door, to the next door. So I think that's very key. And then I'm not sure if I answered both of the questions, Emma. Was that the question on we need more Donalds, or did I miss one?
I think you covered it.
Okay.
Yeah. Julia's got another question here, and for anybody else who wants, we've got a few minutes left, and this is the last one in the Q&A box, so feel free to type in. How do you make a living, quote unquote, doing this work? How have you secured funding? How big is your team, paid employees versus contractors versus volunteers? And then how can we join this movement/digital network?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So how I make a living, I mean, so one answer is always having low costs. And let me start then with Grounded as our hyper-local community. For Grounded, we so far, the combination is indeed having gotten access to this social infrastructure, this fortress, for a relatively low rental price. That's been key. Then we have made the agreement, or we earn our own money in 1,001 ways. The most useful business cases for Grounded are doing catering assignment, hosting events at our fortress, giving workshops, giving talks, all these kind of things, doing work for farmers. So there we pay people on project basis, where a rough agreement is we do a project that brings in money. The people that worked for that, they get paid a bit goes to the Grounded overhead, which creates the free space to set up all these ecological social activities for free. So we've there basically the answer is low costs, paying people on project basis, and we have a tiny little bit for overhead. And then for me, I'm in a lucky position because next to Grounded, because I'm not needed there all the time. Over the last 7 years, I've also continued to work at Amt, which is also, we do our very best to change systems. So it's not like we have one boom business case. But there we also do, often from our overview of grassroots networks, give advice to, for example, the European Commission on how to organize this collaborative network of food regions. So that then brings up a little bit. And so that's for me personally how I make my living, by just mixing and matching a bit and just getting by. Um, and then for AMPT, we're only 4 people working here on the payroll, but because we take this big ecosystem collaboration approach, we can be a small organization, but part of this big movement and doing bigger projects. And for Grounded, I think we have about, indeed, in terms of the cycle I said, so we have some 650 volunteers, we have 80 co-creators, and we have 12 basically circle leads or department leads. Those are the people with lasting responsibilities. Um, so that's the size of our team, largely.
And how many of them are getting paid how much per month, per year?
Um, About two and
Nominal.
a half people can almost pay their full salaries from that, or survive on that fully. So a lot of people still within Grounded have a side hustle one way or the other.
Yeah.
Or it's a temporary thing, right? Where after that they find a opportunity, a new career step, etc., to go on. So it's often also very much a in-between moment of maybe 2 to 3 years that people are at Grounded, and often then I see them either take charge and become entrepreneurial within Grounded, or you see them connect and become experts and work along in these networks. And how
I
can you movement and the digital network, I want to say also, it starts
yeah,
from physical engagement. So that's what we note with Grounded as well. You organize an event on the dance floor, you're chatting with someone who wants to do more. That's when we invite you into the community chat. That's when you get into all the other resources and digital infrastructure. The same is at scale. So that's also how you keep basically making sure it's from these trusted entry points of real physical interaction that people join into this more profile matchmaking and transactional digital infrastructure.
beautiful. And I think, I mean, when I've been at your fortress, you have a place. There is
Yeah,
a physical space, and that
places.
is a critically important piece. I'm not sure, you said it's low rent, it's basically belongs to the government or something, and
Yeah.
it's you just have a low rent. I just got an email from my mother today saying the old Catholic church down in the south part of town, apparently they shut it down, and now it's somebody bought it and they're trying to turn it into a community center, and they're hosting I think it was a uh like an open mic or something. We have these structures, we have these spaces. If you think creatively in your area, oftentimes there are these places, and I do think it's critically important to have that physical place where things can happen, where people can come together, where these, the momentum can occur. Um, so I'll just offer that as one thing I noticed about your situation.
Yeah, yeah. Now having a real place is key. You need to
Yeah,
experience it with one another.
yeah. Being together in physical plane, doing stuff. Physical plane, do
That's
stuff.
where we want to be. That's
Part of the physical
where we
plane,
want
do
to
stuff in the
be.
physical plane, meet people in the physical plane, use electronics if you have to, but be together. That's yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
and that's really what I note as well. Like, yeah, it can all be very difficult and a lot of hard work and sometimes stressful, and of course, but then, when you're sitting there under the shade of the tree and you see people working in the garden, or what I also love at Grounded is the diversity of skills. You have people who are super nerdy about woodworking, some are super nerdy about light installations, etc. You just hear people chatting about these topics, diving deep, and I'm like, "Ah, it's all good. We can do this."
yeah, yeah. All right. So Katrina says, when you live in a conservative slash reserved slash traditional village slash city, how do you start reaching out to see who is out there that might be on the same wavelength?
Um, I wish Mark was here to speak for this because he lives in a smaller, more conservative farming
Yeah,
village. So that would be a good example. I think it's always about looking. So let me first talk from my perspective and then share Mark's. I think what I would do if you're there, maybe you have 2 or 3 friends or initiatives that you also see in the village that are trying to do it different or trying to set something up new. I would really just be gutsy and say, hey, together we're going to organize an event for making a healthier food system in this village. Or think about what's also the cultural narrative that you want to latch on to. Okay, think about the name that you use, because I've described this process of regional collaboration. However you call that process should be fitting with the context where you're in. So in Amsterdam, the first time we did it, we called it this a just transition to robust regional and regenerative food systems, which to be honest was maybe a bit too many words for this. I then applied it in Utrecht, and we have the Utrecht accent here, and I just called it Utrecht. Damn. And people were like, oh, okay. So they showed up. So I think whatever is already a pride of the town, whatever is already something people are proud of, make use of that, co-organize it with one or two other initiatives, and then just reach out and say, who else is working on this? And see who shows up. That's, to be honest, the start.
Yeah, start.
Start, yeah, yeah.
I'm just thinking about my parents who, moved into a small town that was not that progressive, we'll call it, not totally conservative, but I, started the local farmers market and started a choir in town and helped run the community band and helped run the playhouse, and there's all kinds of things that are cultural, foundations of a community, whatever it is, whatever your age is, that you can get engaged in. And maybe that's part of the
Absolutely.
broader
Yeah,
ethos.
so indeed,
Is
Mark started, for example, or with an urgency, something to fix together. So in the rural village where Mark lives, and really like food is also for me, it's not political, it's not left or right, it's a human right. So also to get out of that framing a little bit, make it really practical. What do we need to fix here? And for Mark, it was the local supermarket was going out of business. Well, about 34 young people work in this local supermarket. So they were like, no, no, wait, this is not cool if this is going out of business. So now they started this whole process. They did a questionnaire to 600 families, asking them, one, whether they could commit to doing their groceries in the future, whether they wanted to contribute to saving this mini market and become a co-owner of it, etc. So it like galvanized this massive engagement from the village of only 600 families to together save this mini market so that their children can keep working there. And that's just a starting point. And now, actually, this network and all the information of how people want to engage is leading to many more different projects in that same region. And also, they're aligning with some of the key leaders in this village. You have to know who are the few, like, socially really influential people and build deep trust with them. And then think about what is our ambition? Is there an ambition here to make this village food, water, energy autonomous for the next 100 years? Okay. So with the real few leaders, trusted people, dive deep, set out this bigger ambition for the larger group, fix something practically now.
I live in a small town that you could consider not to be very progressive, and
Mhm.
everybody who lives there wants the best for their town that they really feel pride in, and their children and their community, they're proud of it. And so I think, yeah, meeting reality where it is, where you are, reaching out, getting out there, finding something that needs to be done. These are just, yeah, all very practical skills. I think, it's been a much different um topic than others we've covered here in this theme of
Yeah,
renaturing ourselves. But I think it's so visceral and so powerful. Is just get out and engage others in meaningful work, right?
yeah,
We can all do it. And certainly the aspects of doing it with nature, with the food and all that kind of stuff is
make
visceral and
it
powerful.
fun.
But
Like,
even just engaging humans,
yeah,
not just actually deeply and meaningfully engaging humans, and taking responsibility for the culture in our place, in our lifetimes, is in and of itself a massive thing, and will bring great vitality and vigor and have all kinds of, you know, ripples we will never begin
yeah,
to.
sometimes you don't even know the effects. That's
Yeah, which is
definitely.
fine, which is fine. But
And
but deal with reality. Don't think about something in the future. Don't think about something that's like, oh, what if? Like, you are here now, so be there now.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you have to start, but you don't have to do it alone. I think that's also very important to say. And I just want to share the example of what happened today again. Like Dan, you connected me to this guy who was here today who had a whole program for young, new, next generation agronomists. And I'm like, here, look, I have all these hundreds of people that want to find a new life working on regenerative agriculture,
He's
nature
a
restoration,
brilliant guy.
etc. But I was like, I'm looking for training content. It would be so cool to have a applied local training for new agronomists. And he's like, oh, I have this whole content. I'm looking for the people. So sometimes it's these matches that just unlock so much more value than you indeed could think for yourself.
And if you get together with people, you'll find magic will happen because there's these connections that we each have, and all of a sudden magically we're brought together. So get out of the house and go meet people and hang out. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been a thoroughly enjoyable couple of hours, Martin. Thank you very much for your time here
Thank
with
you. It's
us.
been a big honor to speak. I've very much enjoyed the other speakers on this series as well. And it's a great movement as, yeah, we're all moving along and great to swarm with all of you on these topics.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.